mentioned, I'm Elsie Flemings, and I'm honored now to introduce Jason Brown, also known as Firefly, a citizen of the Penobscot Nation and an incredible artist who will open our dinner here tonight with a traditional Wabanaki welcome song as a blessing to honor the food we are about to eat, to honor the land that we sit or stand on, and to honor each and every one of us tonight. Firefly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again so much to Firefly for opening our dinner with such a beautiful and moving invocation. Thank you. So, as we gather tonight together to enjoy delicious food from this land and to discuss projects using land and food, it is critical that we honor that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wabanaki Confederacy. The harm that has been caused by generations of physical and cultural genocide of the Wabanaki peoples is still felt today, and we are deeply committed to supporting healing and advancing justice. We carry this commitment to justice and healing throughout all that we do at Healthy Acadia and in collaboration with many organizations here today and individuals, as we work in partnership to build healthy, vibrant communities. In response to community needs and priorities, Healthy Acadia works on a broad range of collaborative health initiatives with 6 areas of focus: strong beginnings, healthy food for all, substance prevention and recovery, active and healthy environments, healthy aging, and health promotion and management. One of our key guiding values that is a thread throughout our work is health equity. We believe that all people must have access to resources and conditions that support their best health and well-being, and we are committed to continually learn, to create opportunities and environments that help all people thrive, and to address the health disparities and inequities in all we do. Healthy Acadia's project of focus for tonight, Downeast Restorative Harvest, epitomizes how we work in and with our communities to address the challenges we face and build health for all. Arising out of locally defined priorities and the wonderful opportunity to collaborate with key partners and sponsors, we are building a vision for a community jail food justice project that will meet many interconnected community needs and build health in creative, innovative, collaborative ways. Downeast Restorative Harvest is a community jail farm based in Machias that will produce bountiful, delicious, nutritious produce for those who are incarcerated, as well as for community members experiencing hunger and food insecurity. Simultaneously, it will provide jail residents with meaningful, healthful work with dignity that can reduce jail sentences and/or provide income, along with education and skill building to support future employment, health, and well-being. And it will offer similar educational and vocational opportunities to community members as they engage in the farm, with a particular focus on building health and learning opportunities for the recovery community, for youth, and for others, based on guidance and leadership from those communities. This project would not be possible without the extraordinary leadership and partnership of the Washington County Sheriff's Office and Jail, the Washington County Commissioners, the Maine Department of Corrections, Maine Cooperative Extension, and the incredible, generous support and partnership of so many others, including all of you here tonight. Thank you. I want to particularly thank Washington County Sheriff Barry Curtis and Jail Administrator Rich Rolfe. There you are. Thank you. For being here tonight, for your incredible leadership and partnership, for the long drive to come down here amidst your many busy duties. Thank you. And I want to thank and recognize several Department of Corrections staff, including Mark McBrine, Anna Black, Krista Okerholm. Welcome. As some of you may have heard, unfortunately, the Department of Corrections Commissioner, Randy Liberty, isn't able to be with us due to actually recovering from COVID, which he said we could share tonight. And he was really set on being here. So he is with us in spirit, and we're excited to have our wonderful partner and leader in this work, Mark McBrine, who will share his story in a little bit, the important work they're doing and our collaborative efforts. It is a true honor to be here with you all, to share the beautiful harvest of Downeast, Maine, and to hear words coming ahead from incredible, inspiring leaders. I look forward to reflecting together on the important topics that will come up tonight, exploring how we each can have a role in building a future in which all people can thrive, in which the opportunities for health are plentiful and equitable, and in which all people are valued and celebrated for being themselves and for growing into their potential. I'm honored next to introduce Aishatu Yusuf, Vice President of Innovation Programs at our wonderful partnering organization, Impact Justice. It has been such a joy getting to know Aishatu and other wonderful Impact Justice team members over these past months, learning about and supporting each other's synergistic projects and planning for this evening. She and the whole team do incredible work, and I'm thrilled that they are bringing their national expertise, vision, and passion here to benefit our communities in Maine. So welcome, Aishatu.
I cannot believe we are here today. What you don't know, what you can't see is this has taken months and months and months of planning. And, Impact Justice could not be more grateful to the partnerships here, to Healthy Acadia and everyone that has allowed this chair to be here, the tomatoes to be on the table, and the table numbers to be there. I can't believe we're here today. So thank you all so much. So as Elsie said, my name is Aishatu Yusuf. So I've had this name my whole life, naturally. And I've never had so many people ask me how to say my name, how to pronounce my name, and ask me over and over again. And that is indicative to the people that are here today, because you've worked to see me and my full self. And I spent a lot of years in this body, and I haven't experienced that. And so I want to tell you thank you for that. And I feel like if we can get Beethoven and Socrates, we can get Aisha too. So I just want to thank you so much for doing that. So as Elsie said, my name is Aishatu. I'm the Vice President of Innovation Programs at an organization called Impact Justice. In honor of being here on the indigenous land of the Wakampi people, I felt it important to say, I am not indigenous to this land. My family hails from Nigeria, the northern part of Nigeria, house to land. And earlier today, we had a wonderful lunch with Leah Penniman and so many brown and black leaders of your area many are here today, so good to see you all. But Leah asked us a question of what grounds you to this land? Why are you here? And I think it's important, and I took a minute to think about that question, which is because I'm not indigenous to this land, I often don't find land as a foundation for me. People are foundation for me. Human beings are that for me. So my family's from Nigeria. I grew up in Utah. Yes, there's like 4 black people. Maybe 3, my sister and I left. I think that was so important. I appreciate that question, Leah, because it made me ask what grounds me, what brings me to this space. So at Impact Justice, we are a national organization, a criminal justice transformation and reform organization. We have offices in Oakland and Los Angeles and DC, but our work is across the country, which is why I'm in Maine today. We really work on 3 specific things. How do we ensure people stay out of the system? What do we do to ensure people that are in the system are treated with decency and humanity? And how do we provide the necessary resources for people upon their exit? I am standing here today again on indigenous land, but I'd be remiss if I did not also speak to the enslaved people from this land that made this possible, that worked this land so that many wealthy owners could afford to build thriving communities in Maine. New England and Maine had enslaved people that worked this land. And it's important to understand that the subsequent institutions that came from enslavement are what we know. One subsequent institution is what we know as America's carceral system. That enslavement, which the carceral system is an outcry of, is when they sequestered and imprisoned black and brown people for the purpose and opportunity to literally work the land. And that is why today we have black, brown, indigenous, and poor people in our prisons by the millions. And that is why Impact Justice, Healthy Acadia, and so many organizations are working to change that system that was fully created purposely and created on the backs of people that work this land. So I think we all have 2 things in common, well, maybe perhaps 2 things in common. One, an appreciation of really good food, and an understanding that food that tastes good and that is good for you is out of reach for so many people, both in Maine and across this country. And nowhere is that more pronounced than our prison and jail systems, where people who are incarcerated have no opportunity and no availability to control what they eat, how they eat it, or where they eat it. So 2 years ago, folks at Impact Justice, so many of my colleagues, we released a report called Eating Behind Bars. It was the first kind of national conversation on the state of food in prison. It sparked a conversation that discussed the fact that many prisons are out-of-sight food deserts for people that are incarcerated, and that food inside of carceral facilities is too often punishment in addition to the time that they're serving. So today, we're working to change that reality along with so many partners here. And we have the wonderful support from Healthy Acadia and also the Maine Department of Corrections for us to be able to do that today. So I'm standing here, but I'm representing so many people. I'm here today with the president and founder of Impact Justice, Alex Buzansky, who's on table 9. Shout out table 9. Erica Lawson, who was standing somewhere and has now walked away. She's in the back, director of development, who's helped put on this event today. And I would be remiss if I did not mention my colleague, Leslie Sobel, who is the heart and soul of the Food in Prison Project, who unfortunately was sick and unable to join us and cried many tears because of her ability to not be here today. So I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to also talk about the fact that our project that we're doing here is called Chefs in Prison. And Leslie, who you'll see one day, will be in Maine to actually support the pilot project of Chefs in Prison. So Chefs in Prison will accelerate the efforts to provide fresh, nourishing, and appealing food to incarcerated people, both as a fundamental human right and as an investment in healthy communities. What I know for sure is that those individuals that are incarcerated will be your neighbors, will be your local business owners, will be your taxi drivers, will be in your schools. And it's important that the food that we provide them while they're incarcerated provides healthy body and soul so that when they get out, they can thrive in your communities. Our core partner for this project is Dan Giusti, who's also over here. And Dan, who was the head chef of a Michelin star restaurant, some of you may know it, called Noma, Dan left that job and decided to actually bring more healthy and nutritious food to everybody. Dan started a company called Brigaid, which brings healthy food to schools and senior centers across this nation, because Dan and Brigaid believe that everyone is deserving of healthy, delicious, and nourishing food. So what we'll do for Chefs in Prison as a culinary professional chef that will be oversaw by Dan and his team. We'll work closely with Commissioner Liberty and other folks at the in DOC to improve the food service for all of Maine correctional facilities. That effort will include providing culinary training to every incarcerated person that works inside the kitchen, with the added benefit of boosting their employment prospects after release. Chefs in Prison is also an environmentally sensitive pathway to reducing food waste, because I tell you this, when food is good, it's less likely to be in the garbage. So Commissioner Randy Liberty, who again is unable to be here with us today, invited us to pilot Chefs in Prison at MDOC. And then Mark McBrine, who you'll hear from later today, will speak more about that partnership in their own story. But I've spoken to a lot of correctional officers, facilities, and leaders across this nation, and I've never met anybody who cared so much about ensuring that people that are incarcerated are treated with dignity and respect. And that is why we are piloting this project in Maine. So I am so grateful to be here with you all tonight. I'm so grateful for you opening us with welcome arms. People often say, if you're not from Maine, if you don't know Maine, they're not gonna like you. That is not my experience. Everyone here has been so welcoming, and I truly appreciate it. Maybe it's everybody else that gets that, so if it's not me, that's fine. And so without further ado, I do want to introduce you to the next speaker we have, which is Mark McBrine, who is a leader in the farm to prison movement through the Department of Corrections. Mark has been with the department for 12 years, serving as kitchen manager for 3 facility kitchens. In this role, he traveled across the state, helping staff and residents create stunning working organic gardens, producing over 1,000 pounds of produce. He is the department, he created apprenticeship programs and vocational programs and culinary arts programs inside of facilities. And again, as a person who's been in a lot of prison systems, that is amazing. Mark has been farming and composting across the state with the prison system. He's implemented baking programs for residents where they learn to produce 100% of all the bread and desserts using Maine grain and flour. I know, that's a big deal, right? Mark has inspired the department to work smarter, to move harder towards impactful, sustainable goals, to be a leader in the farm to prison movement, and he's done all of this with a special sort of kindness. Mark's an industry leader, gaining national recognition by both Impact Justice and among other organizations, recently winning the Association of Correctional Food Services and Correctional Food Service Operator of the Year. That's a big deal, Mark. You better get it. He's a local guy. He's from here, living the farmer's life with his wife and their 47-acre diversified farm where they farmed organically for over 30 years. So it's with my honor and pleasure that I now welcome to the stage Mark.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you, Aishatu, for that introduction, and thank you, Elsie, for inviting me here tonight. I know Commissioner Liberty is sad to not be here. He'd be very proud to be able to see all of you folks that are so passionate and concerned about food equity, and just send you his regards. It's been an honor to work with Healthy Acadia, Impact Justice, and looking forward to working with Dan and Brigade and any of the other folks that we'll probably come across that are here tonight. I'm fortunate to be able to work with so many just really great people. And as Aishatu referenced, my work allows me to be at the intersection of farming and prisons. And I can tell you that I never saw it as a goal to work at a prison. It's one of those things I'll go into a little bit later, but it's been something that's been very rewarding. Our goal in the Department of Corrections is to not just create healthy access to good local nutritious food, but also to be able to train people that have a desire to be able to take that food and process it and cook it and be able to share it with their family, their residents that they live with. It's quite an amazing thing when you see people that are able to start creating dishes and foods just like we were able to have tonight, and to be able to, something about a cook, if you've been in that type of situation, it's fairly rewarding when you see people satisfied with that, and to be able to see these residents that learn these things and be able to share it with the other residents, it's transforming for them. In my day-to-day work, I oversee the 3 kitchens, has been mentioned. When I took on the position as food service manager, I said, you know, I really, with my farming background and food service background, I wanted to be able to just make a difference in the meals that we had. As a farmer and a market farmer, my wife and my children and I, we did 5 farmers markets, CSAs, senior farm shares. We were involved with all these type of things, but it was always something that was mentioned at the market. They said, boy, you must really be thankful that you can get all this food for free for your family. And what I would tell the people is, I could go to the store and buy a lot of these things a lot cheaper than I could raise them. That's not why I do it. It's because I believe it's important to have this type of food for the family. And a lot of the things that we do are basically offshoots of what I learned to do, and my wife and I learned to do as a family. We had 7 children, and we wanted to feed this type of food, so we had to learn how to take whole foods, break them down, and be able to use those whole foods And often we were able to get really good food and be able to do it cheaper than we would have been able to do it to just go get something processed. And that's the approach that I took in the kitchen when I became the food service manager. So for 12 years, I've watched people change their lives by tilling gardens, harvesting vegetables, and packing trucks bound for other facilities and often food pantries. And there's something about farming, any of you that are involved even in gardening, just the responsibility that you have and the idea that it makes a difference what you do, and if you take care of things, they will flourish, and if you don't, they won't. Some of the people that we have an honor to work with haven't had much that they were responsible for in their lives, and when you see this type of situation, it can be transforming for them to have this, to realize that what they're dealing with is dependent on them, and it just teaches a lot of life lessons. One of the things that was mentioned, we started a bakery apprenticeship program, and we tried to pick off things that would make the biggest difference. When I came, we had a state contract where we would just buy the Wonder Bread type of stuff and everything that was buns and all. And having a family that my mother and my grandmother always baked homemade breads and things, and we always were involved in that. I took my grandmother's recipe for hamburger buns that we would go to the farmer's market with, and often we sold grass-fed beef and pork and different things, chicken and vegetables, but often they were wanting to know if we would sell the buns that my mother would make with my grandmother's recipe. We had them there as a sample, but they were a pretty big hit. So we took that recipe and started making hamburger buns. And once we dove into it, we had to be able to say, okay, this is gonna have to work, because once we end the contract, we can't just go and get bread next week. So we started doing that almost 7 years ago, and now we bake everything that we have: English muffins, bagels, anything you can think of, croissants. We do all of it from scratch. We're very fortunate to have another collaboration with Amber Lamke at Maine Greens. She came up to see what we were doing, and she was very excited, said that the people that we were training had skills that people at her facility didn't even have, and so she wanted to help. So they have this product called Run of the Mill, and they had a hard time getting rid of it because it was a mixture of 5 different grains. Every day when they put something through, they had to run a certain amount through to get it perfect. They bagged that all into bags, and she said, I'll tell you what, I shouldn't say this because somebody will go, I've already had people I've mentioned at conferences, and they go try to get it for their institution, but she sells it to us for $10, a 50-pound bag for organic Maine flour. And so we use this and make the breads, and being able to see these guys learn these skills is just, it's been amazing. They do just production. It's real production. When you're doing 3 meals a day for 400 people, 365 days, and we have some form of bread at every meal, that's a lot of production. It's like real world, these guys are learning skills that can be used outside. And one of our first apprentice, and I usually wouldn't be able to say a name, but there's going to be a documentary that's coming out, and he's already being proved to be in it, so it's going to be on TV. But Mr. Rooney was the first apprentice, and I'll tell you today, he's actually working at one of the governor's restaurants in Maine. They came, interviewed him at the facility. He had a job before he ever left, and they just went up to film last week for the end of the documentary that they're doing. And he's doing amazing, and the owners have said that they feel he'll be in management soon. So it's just really exciting to see these things, and they're not all good stories. That we've also had, I've had an apprentice that left, and 5 days after he left, he overdosed. And so you just keep going on, and you all deal with those things, but if we can at least provide the opportunities to have them have this chance, it just makes a great deal. And I know Mr. Rooney, if you're able to see this documentary, he's going to tell in there that this has just made the difference for him in his life. as I reflect over my career as a farmer and as a correctional employee, I can just say this. When I first started, used to do a farmer's market just a few miles away down in Southwest Harbor was one of the markets that we did. We were involved with some of the first farm to school things. We ended up selling our chicken and beef and pork to MDI High School in a program back almost 18, 19 years ago. So I've been involved in that. I've gone to every meeting that Department of Agriculture and these type of things have done. And often I've talked to Renee Page, that many of you know, in the Maine Farms Institution with her. And I've said, sometimes I think we're just still talking about the same things that we were talking about 30 years ago. But with that being said, meals like tonight and what was here at Beech Hill Farm, the things that are being done with Impact Justice, with Brigade, the things that we're doing in the Department of Corrections, and the things that many of you are involved in Healthy Acadia, those are important models. And what I try to look at is if we can just create models in what we're doing, then it gives some hope and some just a insight that would help people along the way. And that's really why we do what we do, is to hope that just gradually we can make those changes. The collaborations that we all do together, we can learn from each other, and those things are just really important. And if we can just make a difference in as many people's lives as possible, then it's definitely worth it. And I just want to say also that we were really missing Leslie Sobel. She's been a great friend. She's not here tonight, but it's been just really good to work with these people that do care about these things. Thank you.
I have the great joy and honor of introducing Leah Penniman. And she'll come up in a little, yes. Woo! Yes. We are so blessed to have Leah and her partner, Jonah, here with us tonight. Thank you both for making the long journey this way to join us and to share your wisdom and expertise. Leah has been an inspiration and a role model for me since I have come to know about her. First learning about her from last summer's Summer Institute at College of the Atlantic, where she was a key presenter. Leah braids together her deep commitment to soil stewardship, food sovereignty, and Afro-Indigenous wisdom, her great heart and compassionate spirit, her deep understanding of history, and the ability to uplift the forgotten or silenced aspects of history, and her strengths as an educator and author, interweaving all these to be a powerful and unique force in the movement for land, food, and racial justice. Leah co-founded Soul Fire Farm in 2011 with the mission to end racism in the food system and reclaim ancestral connection to land. As co-executive director, Leah is part of a team that facilitates powerful food sovereignty programs, including farmer training for Black and Brown people, a subsidized farm food distribution program for people living under food apartheid, collaborations with tribal communities, youth programs, and domestic and international organizing towards equity in the food system. Leah holds an MA in Science Education, BA in Environmental Science and International Development. She is a Manye Queen Mother in Vodun. Leah has been farming since 1996 and teaching since 2002. The work of Leah and Soul Fire Farm has been recognized nationally by many, too many to name here, and as it very much should be. I'm so very grateful that Leah is here tonight. And without further ado, Leah.
Peace, family. Such an incredible honor to be with you all tonight at the launching of this life-transformative, beautiful, radical program. We made the journey from Soul Fire Farm, Mohican Territory, upstate New York, 8 hours yesterday to come to this rocky shore. It's a place I've never been before, and truly, truly a blessing to stand on these sacred lands and to be with all of you. And excited to do a little bit of storytelling about the intersection of food, justice, and the carceral state. So I'll start a bit with our own story at Soul Fire Farm. Jonah and I were living in the south end of Albany, New York, with our then young children. Nashima was 2, Emmett was 2 weeks old. And the south end of Albany is a neighborhood under food apartheid. There were no supermarkets, there were no farmers markets, there was no available land or community garden plot, there was no bus line to get to the supermarket. And when I tried to use my WIC coupons in the bodega, I held up the line and somebody spit on me. I wasn't the only one experiencing the difficulty of getting fresh, healthy, nourishing food to my children. Our neighbors were similarly struggling. As are people all across Turtle Island, food apartheid is an insidious system of segregation that relegates certain people to food opulence while others are relegated to food scarcity. It's why there's disproportionate burden of diabetes and hypertension and kidney failure in Black and Brown and Indigenous communities. And it's from a legacy of redlining, of restrictive covenants that zone certain areas for people of color and others for everyone else, because of urban renewal and because of legacies of institutional racism. And so when our neighbors found out that Jonah and I both had over a decade of farming experience under our belt, they said, well, half joking, when are you gonna start a farm for the people? When are you gonna start a farm for us? And like many young farmery folks, you have the dream of one day, getting the land and building your house and eking a living out of the hillsides. But we started to take that really seriously. What would it be to start a farm whose mission was solely about feeding our people and treating food as a human right rather than a commodity or something, a privilege reserved for the few? And so we, long story short, wed ourselves to this 80 acres of land way up in the mountains of Mohican Territory back in 2007, and spent 4 years building the highly degraded soil, building a home, putting in the septic, the electric, the road, all of that. And then the very first program that we opened, of course, was a doorstep delivery of free and low-cost food into the south end of Albany. And so we were feeling pretty good about this, it's made a huge difference. Our members were telling us if it wasn't for this, I'd be eating ramen. Now my children are eating fresh vegetables, my cholesterol's gone down, all of this. But a few years into the farm, got a visit from this wonderful mentor and elder of mine, Baba Curtis Muhammad, who passed away just last year. And he's a Black Panther civil rights activist, really incredible contributions to the rights that many of us enjoy today that we didn't just a generation ago. And so I was telling him this story, I was really excited, and he said, well, you know what Black farmers were doing in the civil rights movement? I didn't. He said there quite literally would be no civil rights movement without Black farmers. If you're gonna go ride down for Freedom Summer, they're not gonna put you up in some hotel or let you dine at the local restaurant, right? They're not gonna let you meet in their churches. The only place where people could organize was on Black-owned land. And so the meeting places, the armed protection, the food, the shelter, even the collateral to get folks bailed out of jail came from the Black farming community. And he said, so what, you're delivering carrots? Oh, that's cute. What are you doing to get us free? What are you doing to get us free? And we took that really seriously because while survival programs can't be understated, we're in this for a long game, and we're in this for true empowerment and true leadership of all people who've been dispossessed. And so we got involved with the Freedom Food Alliance, and there's actually a beautiful Maine connection to this. I don't know if you all know political prisoner Herman Bell, who was recently released after 40 years of incarceration for his role in the Black Panther Party. And while he was incarcerated, he collaborated to co-found the Victory Gardens project in central Maine, which was focused on sustainability and self-sufficiency through growing food in impoverished communities. And they provided for their own community. They provided food boxes to folks who were inside, and they also built entrepreneurial skills through the program. So my friend Jalal and some of my other radical farmer friends were mentees of Herman Bell and started the Freedom Food Alliance because the Department of Corrections in New York State in 2011 had stopped giving rides between New York City and the upstate prison. So there was literally no way for most families to see their loved ones. So we had the Victory Bus Project, named after Victory Gardens, Herman Bell's project in Maine, and started providing these rides to Sing Sing and the other upstate prisons. But along with your ride, you stopped at a farm like Soul Fire Farm upstate and got a box of vegetables, one to take home and one to go ahead and deliver to folks inside. And there was political education. Folks were reading like Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow on the bus. And, you know, upstate had been associated only with prisons. So to actually have a farm experience was really radical for people. We also taught farm entrepreneurial courses inside. But most importantly and closest to my heart is we took that one step further and started working with Albany County Department of Corrections to create a diversion program. Because the youth carceral state and the school to prison pipeline, like most places in upstate New York, it's horrendous. I mean, young Black men in particular, if they're truants or considered incorrigible, they're very quickly fast-tracked into juvenile detention. And so I have a great friend who's a prosecutor on the inside, and she was seeing this, and she said, you know, I think I can get some change if you would just be willing to pilot a diversion program, and we can prove to these people who are skeptical that there's something else to do with these young people besides put them in juvenile detention. And so she's amazing. I mean, she got legislation passed in order to get this diversion program and the judges, everybody on board. But the way it basically worked is that the young people could come participate in a specialized leadership program on our farm, earn money, pay restitution to their, quote, victims. And I have an analysis about that. But then, you know, take money home, take food home, build leaderships, all of this. And, on the very first day of the program, we had 5 in our initial cohort. And I remember Hassan and Ben and 3 others, you know, they got out of the van, they looked around and they were like, are y'all slaves? And then they said, if y'all are slaves, is this like better or worse than prison? Which is funny and also fair, you know, because, and we're gonna take a little historical detour here because, you know, as we've already started to talk about, the history of the carceral state and the history of industrial agriculture are pretty intertwined. You know, as my friend Chris Bolden Newsome, who's a farmer in Philly, would say, land was the scene of the crime. Land was the scene of the crime. We can talk about the 12.5 million African people who were kidnapped from their homes and forced into chattel slavery as the original mass incarceration, forced to work native lands, mostly unceded territories, to build the backbone of our economy in this nation. We can talk about the very first police forces in the United States were formed in North Carolina in 1704. They were slave patrols. This police force was nationalized in 1793 with the Fugitive Slave Act, which made it legal to go capture both escaped slaves, but also free Black people and force them back into incarceration in the southern states. We can talk about the so-called abolishment of slavery in 1865 when the 13th Amendment was passed, but it had a handy little loophole that made it legal to still incarcerate people if convicted of a crime. And an explosion of new laws came on the books after 1865 called the Black Codes, which made it suddenly illegal to hang out with 3 people if you were Black. That's called loitering. It was suddenly illegal to be unemployed, specifically not to have a year-long contract on a farm. That's called vagrancy. It was illegal to not be upright and honest and industrious. The crime for not being upright, or the punishment for not being upright and industrious, was to have your children taken away and apprenticed to their former masters to learn industry. And so the prisons filled with Black people, doubling and tripling the population of Black folks in most southern states, who were then in turn leased back to the plantation, the mines, and the railroads through convict leasing, which was not a minor footnote in history, right? In 1898, 78% of Alabama's state budget came from leasing Black people back to plantations, right? This was very significant and continues to this day, by the way. And so, you know, this continued on even after the end the end formally of the Black codes during the civil rights movement. A lot of the farm programs were sharpened into weapons to punish civil rights activities. So if you go as a farmer, a Black farmer, to the USDA office to get the same loan that the white farmer just got to put irrigation in the middle of a drought, but you had been seen trying to register to vote or join the NAACP, your application would be ripped up right in front of your face. Read Pete Daniels' book, Dispossession, on that. Or look into the Pigford case. Similarly, sharecroppers who had organized for their rights were punished with near starvation during the Greenwood food blockade in 1962, when 20,000 Black sharecroppers were prevented from getting food aid because of the audacity to try to register to vote. Right, and it goes on. We're in the age of mass incarceration, and still, prison labor is a $40 billion a year industry, people working for free or no money for corporations and for farms. And during the pandemic, prison labor on farms, unpaid prison labor on farms took a huge jump. So in my state of New York, in upstate New York, this is particularly close to home because the rural economy, which used to be primarily agriculture, especially dairy farming, is now primarily prison, private and state prisons. The price supports were removed, which made farming not viable. And the draconian drug laws created huge demand to create more prison beds. And so all of these rural politicians have huge incentives to keep that system going of like putting more people incarcerated, because now everyone's relying on those prisons, for their jobs. It's sometimes the only job in some of those counties in upstate New York, to the point where in New York and also nationwide, we now have more prisoners than we do farmers. We have more incarcerated people in this country than we have people growing food. So it is not an exaggeration to say that the history of industrial agriculture is the history of the prison system. So we come back to Hassan and Ben and these young people on the farm who are like, are you all slaves? Is this just like incarceration? It's a fair question. Of course, we work with them. It's not uncommon. I've worked with youth for almost 20 years, and especially for young Black and Indigenous youth, that type of fatalism is a form of internalized racism. They are so used to seeing their family and community with premature death as a reality. And they think it's either going to be the bullet, it's going to be incarceration. So why do I need to think about healthy food? Like, what is even the point? Why would I think about entrepreneurship? I can't count on my own future. But it is through relationship to land and relationship to people who truly care that healing starts to happen. They get to grow flowers and make a bouquet for their mom. They get to fix burritos for each other, learn how to carve a bow and arrow. My son Emmett, at the time we started this program, was about 9 and like a really cute, sweet little brother figure for them. And I remember them all starting to work on carving and doing some archery. And one of the most sort of incredulous, standoffish kids, Hassan, actually stole a cell phone while he was at the farm. And, understandable, but still not okay. And the skeptics who had reluctantly agreed to this pilot program took that as an opportunity to think that they should call it all off. They were like, you know what? This just doesn't, see, these kids, right? You can't trust them. And we said, give us a chance to do our process. And so because of shame, once found out, Hassan didn't come back to the program the next day. But Emmett called him up. My little 9-year-old kid, and said, I really miss you. And you promised that we were going to finish our bow and arrow and we were going to play together. And like through literal tears is asking this child, please come back. And he did. He came back because he mattered to somebody. And we finished out the week and we do the things we do. We tell stories of history and we engage them in the political process. We're part of the New York Prisoner Justice Coalition. And so they got to do their policy priorities and learn how to plant turnips and all this stuff. And meanwhile, the suits, of course, are still not super psyched about this. And they want to come on the last day of the program with their clipboards and like evaluate these children. And I was saying, how would that feel to you to kind of be farming and be watched and kind of evaluated? And they were like, not great. I said, well, how can we flip this? Like, what can we do to culminate and really show them what you've done and sort of check off this box, but do it in a way that's dignified? And they said, well, what if we taught them how to farm? And so we told them to bring their boots and their gloves. And so the judges and the prosecutors and the lawyers and all of these folks have to come out to the farm and take direction from these system-involved youth on how to plant turnips. And boy, were they exacting. They were like, oh, no, 1 inch apart. I told you how to measure an inch. You place and you do and you pat down. And we're able to really demonstrate with pride, some of these skills that they learned. And I'm very happy to say that the pilot we did a 3-year pilot. It was successful. And now, Albany County permanently has this diversion program so that young people can do something other than go into jail. They can do leadership programs, which is wonderful. And also why it's so important to me and so beautiful to me to be amongst all of you who see the humanity of all of us, right? And see how important it is to treat food as a human right, to treat folks, whether they're inside or outside, as full, sacred human beings with not just potential, but actual intrinsic value in this moment. And that you see the importance of addressing these intersecting issues of racial justice, of land sovereignty, and of food access. And so I want to just take my hat off, 3 bows to each of you for committing your time, your financial resources, your heart, your talent to this really sacred and important project. And with all sincerity, I really wish you the best. And I hope that we continue to collaborate. I do want to close with one of my favorite poems. This is from my friend Ross Gay. And for those, just context to understand the poem. So for those who aren't aware, Eric Garner was murdered by police just a few years back, and his last words were, "I can't breathe." A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means perhaps, in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants, which most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow. Continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe. Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce an amazing guest that we have here. Many of you all know that I have recently had the pleasure of becoming probably closer than he would like to be with Impact Justice. So first I want to say once again, thank you so much to Leah for your beautiful, amazing words. You hold the spirit of the ancestors that came before you and the folks that will come after you, and I truly appreciate that. So now I want to introduce Steve, who is the reason we are all here today. And folks at Impact Justice and Healthy Acadia cannot thank Steve enough for saying yes, right? Which is the hardest thing to do. It's the moment that you say yes. So at Impact Justice, we often joke that we'll tell anybody and anyone who has a listening ear about the work we do and about criminal justice transformation reform. It's not every day someone perks up. It's not every day someone actually listens to us. And when we were introduced to Steve, we didn't have to do much explaining, much conversation before Steve said, yes, I support what you're doing. And that is such a rarity in our world. We mentioned food and justice and prison systems, and Steve said, yes, I want to hear what you have to say. And that's such a rarity in our world. Now, I suppose Steve's 20 years serving as a Superior Court judge, set him up for that conversation. But, Steve has really been in this world, both as a professional and a volunteer, again, serving as a judge, working on detention on alternatives for youth. Long before the diversion conversation was happening, Steve was working on diversion and different detention alternatives for youth, much like what Leah talked about earlier today. Steve has really been the force behind Justice Aid, both in his professional life and his volunteer life, has really supported the conversation of diversity, of equity, inclusion, and of justice. And so without further ado, I want to bring Steve up to the stage, because he is why we are here, and we cannot be more grateful.
I have to say, it was very strange when I first heard from, I guess it was Leslie and Aishatu, about the work of Impact Justice. And Aishatu starts explaining, we want to do this food justice thing in Maine. And I'm like, can this be real? I said, I said, I need to hang up right now and call some people in Maine because I think we're talking about the same thing. And then the rest of it was, could we all collaborate? Could we all get together? And I had to ask Impact Justice, can you work with Healthy Acadia? And Healthy Acadia, can you work with Impact Justice? And they both said yes. So my only message is we have an opportunity because of the Maine food movement, food justice movement, the locavore, and other great traditions in this relatively small state to do something that brings together people in corrections, law enforcement. And I did say before I went to law school, I started out as a guard in the night shift in a reform school in upstate New York. So I have a little bit of a corrections background. And I just want to invite you in because I think it's incredibly important that we succeed at what we're trying to accomplish here in Maine. And I think we have a better chance here in Maine, which is what Impact Justice learned from its research, than in any other jurisdiction in the country. And if we can do it here, for me in DC, it's the DC jail. It's the whole federal corrections mess. If we can do it here, we can do it in New York. We can do it in Rikers, and when it's closed, in the community facilities that created after Rikers. We have to be very conscious of and careful about the historic abuses that Leah addressed. We're not here trying to create Parchment Farm. We're not here trying to create Angola. We're trying to do in Maine something that's incredibly restorative, incredibly positive, and I just hope you'll join us because I think you've heard from some extraordinary people who are as delightful as they are loving and committed. And so if you, and of course part of this is you need to leave your purses and wallets and empty your pockets and put it all on the table. But actually the response has been so positive from the sponsors who are here tonight, the people who said yes to helping put on this dinner, immediately said yes. And we're more than halfway to our goal of raising the money we need to operate for 4 years. And that's in a few months. So thank you, and I just invite you to join us on this journey because I think it's got a tremendous amount of power. Thank you. Love you tremendously.
Thank you so much, Steve, for those wonderful, amazing words. So this is a fundraiser nonetheless. So on your tables or underneath your bums, there's a gray folder. If you open up that folder, it has both the agenda that we had for tonight. It has information about Healthy Acadia and Impact Justice. It also has envelopes to give. So feel free. There's QR codes, however you want to do that. Erica Lawson, Alex Buzansky, everyone of Healthy Acadia from Shoshana to Elsie are all walking around. Regina walking around. If you want to give, just tap us on the shoulder. Dan's back there. Tap us on the shoulder. I promise you, we'll know how to help you do that. So again, thank you so much. Please let us know if you have any questions regarding that, and I'll turn it over to Elsie to close us out.
Thank you. Oh, my co-MC, wonderful to share the evening with you, with all of you. Again, huge thanks to Steve and all of you for your incredible commitment and being here today. Yes, I love it. Oh. Just a deep thank you to our sponsors for making this event so impactful. Yes, thank you. Annie, Joan, and Jamie Blaine. Feel free to clap. Susan Codino-Buell, Cleary Law Office, Lindsay Weld, Peter Milliken, Rebecca and Steve Milliken, Jeannie and Will Thorndike. A huge thank you to College Atlantic and Beech Hill Farm for hosting us on this beautiful land, being such amazing partners. A huge thank you to Sassafras for the incredible meal and beautiful ways of coming and going. And to the many farms who contributed their amazing food here on our plates. Huge thank you again to Leah and Jonah for traveling all this way to be with us and share your words of wisdom. And while we missed Commissioner Liberty tonight, we really are so grateful, Mark, for your incredible words, for your story, for your leadership. Thank you to Mark. Some of you may know, but maybe many of you don't, Mark was actually tilling, groundbreaking, mowing and starting the plowing of the land in Machias that will be the garden, the farm, last week. So in this incredible partnership so thank you to Mark. And thanks again to our wonderful partners, Sheriff Curtis and Administrator Rawl, for being here. Really so grateful. Thank you. And Hawk Henries, and Firefly, thank you for opening the night in such an incredible, profound way. And I hope you will leave tonight, as we will, dedicated evermore to working creatively and collaboratively to address the many challenges we face, to take chances, to try new, innovative, collaborative approaches, to see the value now and the potential in everyone, and to continue to build communities in which all people, all of us and all people, are supported to live healthful, vibrant lives. Thank you for being on this journey with us together. Have a marvelous rest of your evening. Stay as long as you like, enjoy, and thank you.